At Home Amateur Museum Theater presents Fierce Women of Jobo, aka Jonesborough, Part 1. Welcome to the Amateur Museum Theater Action News Desk.
This isn't a news show.
Jacket, theme song. On tonight's special report, we are talking about some of the fierce women from Jonesborough's history. Now, there are too many of them for this one special, but we're going to feature some of them today. And our first fierce female is Mrs. Catherine Emmerson, one of Jonesborough's early educators. So we will change our attention to the screen right here.
What are you doing?
We'll add that in post. Just cut to Mrs. Emerson.
Get paid enough for this.
I believe in the value of education for all students, no matter their gender. Now, my husband Thomas Emerson, he was the first mayor of Knoxville, and coincidentally, my brother was the second mayor of Knoxville. I lived in the company of great men, but I never felt eclipsed. Now, Thomas, he died not too long after we were married, and we didn't have any children of our own. But I knew that there were plenty of children who needed a good education, so I started a subscription school for young ladies at my house in 1837. Some sort of gossiped that I'd fallen on hard times, and that's why I had started the school, but I was above such rumors. I had a duty to do. I was a teacher. The ladies would come to my house, and we would practice many lessons, including elocution. Queen Catherine wakes the cat, and the cat quietly cries.
Queen Catherine wakes the cat, and the cat quietly cries.
Oh, splendid. Now, I had that school at my house until 1846, long after other subscription schools had already closed. Now, I am very proud of my legacy to the education of Jonesborough. Our next interview is with another teacher from Jonesborough's history, Mrs. Cordie Bayless Brown, who was an educator at the Warner Institute. Now, tell us, Mrs. Brown, how did you become a teacher?
My name is Cordie Bayless Brown. My family had high expectations for me, especially when it came to education. There was reading, writing, math, and spelling. Tennessee, Tennessee. There was science. Archimedes' principle states that the upward buoyant force that is exerted on a body immersed in a fluid, whether fully or partially submerged, is equal to the weight of the fluid that the body displaces and acts in the upward direction at the center of the mass of the displaced fluid. Do I really have to read all of this? I'd ask the universe that, but then I'd hear my mother's voice in my head. Something worth having is worth working for. Whenever I got frustrated, I remembered my family's story. My grandfather, Jeremiah Edwards, was enslaved, owned by another. He fought his way to freedom, and then he fought in the Union Army to free others. After he was free, he claimed my mother as his daughter, because he hadn't a right to when she was born. It was illegal for my grandfather to get an education, and it was difficult for my mother. But I was lucky. Because of where I lived here in Jonesborough, I had a school in my backyard. There were so many others who still couldn't get an education. I went to school at the Warner Institute. It was a school for the freedmen and their children. All our teachers were white, but the goal was to train new teachers for the black community. I told my mama, I'm going to be the first black teacher at my school. And I studied. I studied until the wee hours of the morning. Everything came second. Family, friends, boys. There was a goal, and I was going to reach it. And in 1895, at the start of the new school year, I was no longer a student or even an alumnus. I was a teacher. The Herald and Tribune said I was the first one of her race that has ever been honored with the position of a teacher in this school, which is highly complimentary, not only to her, but also to the school. I did marry eventually. His name was Alfred Brown, and I didn't have to worry about whether or not our son could go to school. Education is a right, and no one can take it from you.
Next, we're going to visit with Mrs. Julia Bullard Nelson, who only stayed in Jonesborough for a short time but made a lasting impact. So tell us, Mrs. Nelson, what brought you to Jonesborough? Yardley Warner and the American Missionary Association brought me to Jonesborough. Now, I was originally from Minnesota, and unfortunately, my husband and son passed away, and after that, I decided to dedicate my life to teaching. And I wanted to teach the freedmen, those recently freed from enslavement who now had the chance to be educated. The association took me to Texas and to Tennessee, to Jonesborough, Tennessee, where Yardley Warner had opened the Warner Institute. While I was there, I was a teacher of the school, the principal, and I also served in the local Women's Christian Temperance Union. I also championed suffrage. I believe that women deserve the right to vote. I believed in equality in education, equality in voting rights, and equality in the pay you receive for the work you do, no matter of your gender. So I went to Washington, D.C. one summer while I was working at the Warner Institute, and I delivered a speech before Congress to let them know that women deserved to be paid equally for their work. These were the words I shared with them. What are the obligations of the government to me, a widow, because my husband gave his life for it? As a law-abiding citizen and a taxpayer, and one who has given all she could give to the support of the government, I have a right to be heard. I began teaching freedmen when it was so unpopular that men could not have done it. A woman gets for this work $15 per month. If capable of being a principal, she gets $20. A man in this position receives $75 a month. Well, there must be something wrong, but I do not need to explain to you that an unrepresented class must work at a disadvantage. I ask you to remove the barriers which restrain women from equal opportunities with men. If I am capable of preparing citizens, I am capable of possessing the rights of a citizen myself. Now, sadly, in 1887, I had to leave Jonesborough and continue my work elsewhere, but I took a piece of Jonesborough with me always. Before our next report, we're going to check in with our weather cat, Tiffany, to see what's going on outside. Tiffany? Now it's time to check in with Mrs. Hattie Broyles, who's affectionately known as Granny Broyles. And she's going to tell us all about her very unique occupation in Jonesborough and how she got it.
My husband, L.M., he was a jailer for Jonesborough, and I was a teacher at the Conklin High School when we first met. But then I started helping Lola with the jail and the prisoners. In 1930, there was a local election, and my husband, he was a staunch Democrat, and the new sheriff, a staunch Republican. Well, some words were exchanged, and the sheriff didn't take too kindly to what my husband had to say about him, so he stripped him of his title and gave it to me. I proudly served the town as jailer from 1930 to 1932. I never even thought, this isn't woman's work. It was a job, and it needed doing. I must have been the first female jailer in the state, but you know what I'm really proud of? I was the first female on the board of elders at my church. I was also the president of the local chapter of the Women's Christian Temperance Union for 15 years. I had lots of friends, and they all called me Granny, a nickname I am so proud of, and I loved it.
Now it's time for our last story in today's special report. We're going to check in with Jonesborough's first female mayor, Miss Grace Haws, who was elected to the position in 1976. Well, tell us, Miss Haws, how did you become mayor?
Well, I went up and down all the streets and knocked on every door. I didn't ask people to vote for me, but I said I hoped that they would. And I didn't promise anyone anything. Sometimes we hardly talked about the election. We'd just chat and catch up on things. You know, I only spent $100 on my campaign altogether. People have faith and trust in me. They know I can do the job and that I would serve with integrity.
Well, that's it for this edition of Amateur Museum Theater. As you can see, history is full of her stories. So make sure you go out and record the stories of the fierce women you know. And that's it for this special report of Amateur Museum Theater's Action News Desk. Now here's Tiffany Cat again with the weather. Fascinating.